Hi, my name is Nikhil, and in this tutorial, we'll learn how to use Vim. Vim is one of the oldest and most powerful editors out there. And without any doubt, Vim is among the most powerful editors, packed with hundreds of features. And yet, most newbies find it very daunting to use. In this brief tutorial, I will attempt to showcase some of Vim's features so that you can feel very comfortable using it. I assume that you're a complete beginner. If you're already familiar with the basics, jump ahead to sections that you would like to learn about from links in the description. To start Vim, we just type Vim in the terminal. The first thing that you need to know about Vim is that it's a modal editor. Vim starts in a mode called as normal. If you want to make any changes to a file, you need to switch to a mode called insert. To do that, we press I on the keyboard. Notice the insert at the bottom. This shows that we are in the insert mode. Now you can type whatever you want. This is some content. So we can type in more content, some more content. And now that we have some content, let's save our file. Since this is the first time that we are creating this file, we need to provide the file name as well. To save the file, we first need to go back to the normal mode. To do that, we press escape on the keyboard. Notice that insert went away, so we are now in the normal mode. Now we press :W space and the file name. So my file name is first.txt. The W here stands for write. So I'm going to write a file called first.txt. I press enter and it says that first.txt, a new file has been written. Now let's exit Vim. To exit Vim in the normal mode, I press :Q. Q stands for quit and I press enter. So now if I do ls, you notice that first.txt has been created. If I say cat first.txt, you see that the file has the contents that we just added. Now that we have saved our file, let's open it again and make some changes. To open first.txt, I say vim first.txt and I press enter. Now let me add two new lines at the end. So I press the down arrow to go to the end and then the right arrow to go to the end. We'll see how to jump to the end faster at a later stage. I then press I to go into the insert mode. I press enter twice to come to a new line and I say here is another line and here is yet another line. Now that I have added two new lines in the insert mode, I want to save it, so I press escape to go back to the normal mode. Now I simply say :W and press enter. Since this file already has a name, it simply saves it with the same name. Remember to switch to the normal mode before doing operations such as save or exit. And anytime you want to go to the normal mode, you simply press escape. If you want to make any changes, you have to go back to the insert mode. To go to the insert mode, you press I. To go to the normal mode, you press escape. To exit the editor, I say :Q in the normal mode, which means escape, :Q, enter. Right, we have saved our file. Let's verify the contents by running cat first.txt. You can see that the new lines have been added. Okay, now let's open our editor again. Now let me make some garbage changes. So I'll go into the insert mode and add a lot of garbage by mistake. I want to exit this by discarding my changes. So let me try and exit. I go to the normal mode by pressing escape, :Q, and I press enter. Oops, I'm seeing a very cryptic looking error message. Basically, Vim is saying that I've made some changes and I'm trying to exit without saving these changes. I basically have two options. I save and exit, or I save without exiting, basically discarding my changes. In order to exit without saving, all I need to do is add an exclamation at the end, which is what the error message also says. So I press escape, :Q, and add an exclamation and press enter. So that's how you discard your changes and exit. So if I now say cat first.txt again, you see that none of my changes are retained. Now let's see how cut, copy and paste work in Vim. The first thing we do is we open our file again. Now Vim basically supports these three operations: cut, copy and paste. The command for cut is D, the command for copy is Y, and the command for paste is P. Y because it means yank, which is copy in Vim. Now let's see how this works. So let me go to this particular line. This is some content, and I press the letter Y twice on the keyboard. YY basically. Now the moment I do that, pressing YY on Vim basically copies the entire line to clipboard. Now I can move the cursor to some other location and press P to paste. And you notice that that line gets pasted. If I press P two more times, the line gets pasted two more times. So let me try again. I go to here is another line, press YY in the normal mode, and then move the cursor to another location and press P to paste. Similarly, if I want to cut a line, I simply say DD. So I move to the last line, and here is another line. I press DD, which basically cut the line. I now move to a different location and I press P to paste the line. So there you have it. Copy the line YY, cut the line DD, paste with P. Now obviously you might be thinking that copying and pasting entire lines is not something that you always do. You normally select only some areas of text and copy or cut it and paste it in another location. So let's see how to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add some more content over here so that we know that this is new content. So this is what my new content is doing. The quick brown fox jumps over lazy dog. Now I'm in the insert mode. You might have noticed it over here. So I'm going to go back to the normal mode by pressing escape. Now we have learned about two modes, normal and insert. Let's see a third mode, which is visual. To go back to the visual mode, in Vim you press V. Notice it says visual at the bottom. You can now move the cursor and you can see that text below the cursor is getting highlighted. Right, so I have selected quick brown fox, just brown fox jumps. I'm going to press Y, and you might have guessed it, it basically selects and copies only the text that was highlighted. So I move to a new location, and if I say P, you see that brown fox jumps came up over there. So similarly, let me try over lazy. So I go to over and press V to enter into the visual mode, and then move the cursor to select these two words, and I press Y to copy, move to a new location and say P to paste. Similarly, I can cut content in the same way. So let's assume I want to cut the quick brown fox. So I press V, select the quick brown fox, and I press D to cut, move to a new location and press P to paste. We learn about advanced copying and cutting in some time. But before that, let's save and exit. Now, all along what we have been doing is we have been doing it in two phases. We first save the file using :W, and then we quit by saying :Q. Vim also allows you to chain multiple commands together. For example, I can say :WQ, which basically stands for write and quit, or basically save and exit. So if I now say cat first.txt, you notice that the file has saved and we also quit in one single command. Okay, now we allowed me to enter into the visual mode to select characters or lines, but only part of it. There is another visual mode. It's the same visual mode, but I can press capital V instead of small v, and it basically goes into a visual line mode. Essentially, it's visual mode, but for the entire line. And so when I press the down arrow, you notice that entire lines get selected. In order to delete this entire content, I press the command X, which stands for delete. So X is to delete this content. Now let's assume I deleted this content by mistake and I want to bring it back. I can undo these changes by pressing U on the keyboard. U stands for undo. And if I want to redo these changes, I can press Ctrl R, redo, right? So U is for undo, Ctrl R is for redo. And so we have learned 4 commands just now, okay, or 5. V stands for enter visual mode, capital V is enter visual line mode, X is to delete whatever content is selected. We then press U to undo and Control R to redo. So let me go back to the normal mode. I'll press DD to cut, DD, and have deleted 4 or 5 lines. If I want to undo these changes, press U. And if I want to redo these changes, I press Ctrl R. Now that we know a few commands, let's see how to use Vim a little more effectively. Obviously, when you use a text editor, there is a need to jump to a specific line. And you might have noticed that Vim is not showing any line numbers by default. So let's fix that. In the normal mode, I type :set nu. And notice that line numbers have been added. If I want to turn it off, I can say :set nu exclamation, and the line numbers get turned off. So :set nu is to add line numbers, and nu exclamation is to remove line numbers. Now that I have all the line numbers, let's assume I want to quickly jump to line number 3. Now instead of moving the cursor up 10 lines, I can simply say :3 and press enter. Notice that the cursor directly jumped to line number 3. Similarly, if you want to jump to line number 22, you simply say :22 and press enter, and you are on line number 22. If you want to jump to the beginning of the file, you simply say :0. If you want to jump to the end of the file, you say $. That's the last line. Similarly, when you are on a specific line, so let's assume you are on line number 14 and you are somewhere around the middle of the line, you want to jump to the beginning of the line, you press caret. No colons, just caret. So caret takes you to the beginning of the line, and only $ without the colon takes you to the end of the line. So caret to the beginning of the line and $ to the end of the line. $: takes you to the end of the file, only $ takes you to the end of the line. Caret, by the way, is this symbol. It's found above the number 6 typically on your keyboard. Okay, now let's see a couple more ways of entering into the insert mode. Another way of entering into the insert mode is the append mode. Now let's assume I want to add some content at the end of this line. There is one way is I move the cursor to the end of the line and I press I to enter into the insert mode and start adding new stuff. Or from this particular location in the normal mode, I can simply press capital A, which takes me to the end of the line and also enables the insert mode. So it's a quick shortcut, and now I can just type, and this was in the append mode. So you enter append by pressing capital A. So let's assume I'm here, I'm in the normal mode, simply press capital A, takes me to the end and also goes into the insert mode. Similarly, you have another command which is capital O. Capital O inserts a line above the cursor and small o inserts a line below the cursor. And not only does it insert a line, it also goes into the insert mode. So let's assume I'm on line number 15. I want to add a new line at line number 15 and also go into the insert mode. One way is for me to move the cursor to the beginning of the line, go into the insert mode and press enter, which is too many keystrokes. Or in this particular location in the normal mode, I simply press capital O. And you can see that a new line got added over there. The entire content got pushed down by one line and I entered into the insert mode. So I can say this line was added by pressing capital O. Similarly, in the normal mode, I can come over here and press small letter O and it adds a new line below it. And I can add, this was added with small letter O. Okay, now let's try to search for some text. In Vim, in the normal mode, pressing slash enables search. You might have noticed slash appearing over here. Now I can type the word that I'm looking for, which could be, say, was. So W-A-S. I press enter. You see that the cursor jumped to was. To see if there are other occurrences of was, I press N. It jumps to the next occurrence of was. Pressing N again jumps to the next occurrence, and pressing N again goes back to the first occurrence. So it is basically searching downwards and then goes to the top again and continues searching. To search upwards, you press capital N, which goes in the reverse direction. Similarly, if I want to search for the word this, I say slash this. To go in the reverse direction, capital N. To go in the forward direction, small letter n. Two things to note here. You might have noticed that I gave a capital T when I searched for this, which matched only the words with the capital T, but it did not match this particular this, which starts with a small letter t, which means by default the searches in Vim are case sensitive. We'll see how to make it case insensitive in a minute, but before that you might have also noticed that a search with a slash goes in the downward direction by default. If you want to search in the upward direction by default, you give question mark. So giving question mark, this searches in the upward direction. Pressing the small letter N now gets me the next occurrence but in the upward direction, and capital N is in the backward direction. So slash is for downward search, question mark is for upward search, N and capital N basically are for next and previous occurrences. The direction, of course, is dependent on what you used for the search. Now let's see how to make our search case insensitive. To do that, we just say colon set ignore case. Now my search is case insensitive, which means if I search for the small this, it matches even the ones that start with the capital T as well as the one with small t. And if I want to turn it off, I simply say colon set ignore case exclamation mark, just like how we saw for line numbers. And now if I search for this with a capital T, you will see that it is skipping this particular word. Okay, so far we are not seeing Vim behave like one of the modern editors. So let's do some cool things for a few minutes. Let me enable the mouse view. To do that, I simply say colon set mouse equal to A. And running this command enables me to use my mouse, which means now I can select words using my mouse, and you see that it's automatically going into the visual mode, which means I can use Vim like any modern editor to select partial content, or I can select just the word yet another, and then I can press Y to yank, go to a new place, and press P to paste. So I don't really need to move the cursor, I can directly use my mouse. Similarly, I can also run colon tab new, which you might have guessed opens a new tab. So now that a new tab has been created, I can switch between tabs using my mouse, which you might have now noticed that Vim is behaving exactly like a pretty modern editor. To open another tab, colon tab new. Saying tab new and a file name opens an existing file in a new tab. To close a tab, tab C, colon tab C, colon tab C. Of course, you don't need to use the mouse to switch across tabs. You can also do that using commands, but let's use the mouse for now. The complete reference for which commands to be used is present in the description. Okay, now let's continue and create a new file. Let's create a file which contains 10 atomic elements. So to create a new file, I run the command colon e new, which is edit a new file. It's giving me an error saying that I have made some changes. Either I have to discard these by giving an exclamation, or I have to save these changes. Let me save these changes by giving colon w, then colon e new to create a new file. And now in the new file, I'll go into the insert mode by pressing I, and I'll type in a few elements. So hydrogen, helium, lithium, beryllium. How do I spell beryllium? I think it's this. Boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine, and neon. So let me save this as periodic table.txt. Now let's assume that I want to refer to these 10 elements in my first.txt, because I'm basically writing a document on each of these 10 elements. So how do I view both of these at the same time? You might have guessed one solution could be to actually open a tab. So I can say colon tab new first.txt, which opens a new tab. And now I can actually refer to them in this manner. But it's pretty time consuming to continuously switch across tabs. Sometimes it's better if we can have both the views in the same screen. To do that, I can just say colon split and say first.txt. And you notice that Vim created a horizontal split with first.txt coming at the top and the existing file coming at the bottom. So moving across these two split views is extremely easy using the mouse, because I can just click and I'm in this mode, and clicking here I'm in this frame. So switching between frames is very easy. But you can also use your keyboard. You can press Ctrl W and up arrow to come up, and Ctrl W down arrow to go to the bottom frame. Similarly, you can create a horizontal so this is a horizontal split. You can also create a vertical split by using the command colon v split. So let's have a look at that. I'll come back to first.txt and I will exit by pressing colon Q. So I closed first.txt. Now I am in the periodic table. So let me open first.txt in a vertical split mode by saying colon v split first.txt, and notice that it gave you a vertical split. And so now I can refer to the elements on the right side and write content over here. The first element is hydrogen, the second one is helium. This is extremely useful when you are editing two files in parallel or you want to refer to one file in another file. Sometimes it's also very useful to refer to the same file in two different panes, because some code resides at the top of the file and some code resides at the bottom of the file, and probably you're making changes at the bottom of the file but you want to refer to some content at the top of the file. Then you can actually use a split mode. So split allows you to open the same file also if you want to, in this way. So any changes made here will immediately reflect on the other side simultaneously. If you have multiple tabs or multiple split views open, quitting one by one might take you a lot of time because you have to press Ctrl Q against each tab or each split view. Instead, you can just say :QA to exit by closing all tabs and views in one shot. Now let us write a new program, a Java program called hello.java. And once we have our code in place, let's actually save it. Now, very often when you have very large methods, there might be times when you want to jump to the corresponding brackets because it's very difficult to know which bracket closes where. So you can just go to a specific bracket and then press the percentage button to jump to the corresponding close. As you can notice, I am on, so let me enable line numbers. I'm on line number 6. Pressing percentage takes me to line number 3 against the corresponding bracket. Similarly, I am on line number 1. Pressing percentage takes me to line number 8. Percentage again takes me to line number 1. And this is not just for floor brackets, it also works for round brackets. So I'm over here and you can see that the corresponding closing bracket is highlighted, but pressing percentage jumps to the closing bracket. Pressing percentage again takes me to the opening bracket. Now, similarly, let's see how we can use the brackets to our advantage. Very often we want to replace content between opening and closing elements. Opening and closing elements could be quotes, they could be parentheses, they could be flower brackets, and so on. So let us assume that I want to replace hello world with goodbye Bangalore, which is new content, which means I have to delete all the content between this opening quote to this closing quote. So one way, of course, is for me to select this entire content by pressing V, select the whole content, and then press X to delete. Or I can just delete character by pressing X repeatedly. It's also time consuming. Or there's a much better way in Vim. To delete this entire content, I can just say CI double quotes. You see, it deletes everything between the quotes. C basically takes me to the insert mode. C stands for delete and enter into insert mode. I is for inside and double quotes is the delimiter. So if I say CI double quotes, it deletes everything between double quotes. So let's try it again. So let's assume I want to delete everything between this flower bracket and the corresponding flower bracket over here on line 6. So anywhere in between these two flower brackets, I simply say CI flower bracket, opening flower bracket, and it deletes everything between the two flower brackets. So escape and U to undo. Similarly, let's assume I want to copy everything between the two flower brackets. So I'm coming on line number 7 and I press P. I have something in my clipboard already, so let me delete this. So let's assume I want to copy everything between these two quotes. I simply come in here and I say YI double quotes. it copies everything between these two codes. So if I come to line 7 and I paste, you see that hello world has appeared. Let's assume I want to copy everything between the round brackets, which includes the quotes. I simply say yi open round bracket, and if I come here on line number 7 and I press paste, you see that it's pasting hello world with the quotes. Similarly, if I want to copy everything between these two flower brackets, I simply say yi open flower bracket, and if I paste over here, you see it's pasting everything between the flower brackets. This is very useful when you want to delete an entire function body or replace content very quickly. You can just say ci flower bracket and then start writing new code. Replacing text is very easy in Vim as well. So let's assume we want to replace the word this with that. All I need to do is, in the normal mode, I press colon %s slash. I enter the word that I want to replace slash the word with which I have the replacement word, say that, and slash g, which stands for global, to replace all occurrences of the word this. Notice that all this have been replaced by that. I have renamed the hello Java with capital Hello Java and made changes in the code appropriately so that the Java file actually compiles. So notice that the name of the class and name of the file match. So now let me try compiling Java, and you see that it works fine without any problems. It's also created the class file. So now let's open the Java file and let us intentionally remove this semicolon at the end. Now so let's assume that that was the change that I wanted to test. What we would have done is, after making this change, I say :wq to exit. I then run the compilation code. I notice that it's giving me an error. It's saying that there's semicolon expected over here. I again open hello.java, go to that specific line, go to the end, add a semicolon, escape :wq, run the compilation again, and this time it succeeds. During the actual development process, however, this is a very iterative process where developers go into the code, make some changes, exit the editor to go back to the terminal, run a compilation or a test execution, fail, go back to the editor. And I've seen many developers actually doing this entire process where they enter into the editor, make some changes, and then they save and exit, run some compilation, and again enter into the editor. This is a very time consuming process. Not only is it time consuming, it is also incorrect because each time you are basically exiting and re-entering your editor from scratch, so you are losing context. Now my Java file is a very small file with probably 5 or 6 lines, but real code files might actually span to multiple hundreds of lines. So again, coming back to line number 1 and jumping to line number 150 might not be a really good idea. So in practice, how do we do that? A really cool trick to know is to just press Ctrl Z when you are inside your terminal, inside the Vim editor. So pressing Ctrl Z basically takes you to the terminal. So now you can run your compilation code, and it might succeed or fail. And if you want to go back to your editor, you simply say FG to bring your editor back to the foreground. So I can go make some changes, escape Ctrl Z, run some code, and then go back. So I had not saved my code, so Ctrl Z. Notice that there's an error. Bring the editor to the foreground, make a change, save, but not exit. Press Ctrl Z to push it to the background. Compile, succeed, go back. You can also run terminal commands by pressing :!shell, just shell, and then you can just exit by pressing Ctrl D or exit to go back to the editor. If it's just one command that you would like to run, you can just say : java c hello.java. So notice the error, come back, make the change, save, java c, no error, come back. Another very nice feature that Vim provides is code folding. So let's assume that this method is very long. In fact, let's make it very long. I'll copy this line by pressing YY, and then I will paste this 40 times by pressing 40p, 40p. And you notice that it's basically pasted this 40 times. Now, this piece of code is very long, and I might want to collapse this function in order to improve the readability, which is very useful when you have large code files. So how do we really collapse this method? Vim provides what is called as code folding. So let me come to line number 3 and press V to select the entire line. And I'll press percentage to jump to the corresponding flower bracket, which basically selects everything between the opening flower bracket and the closing flower bracket, which is the entire method. And then I will press ZF to enable code folding. And you can see that the 44 lines of this method have been collapsed. So in order to open it, I can simply say ZA, and to close it, I can press ZA again, which is to toggle code folding. If you want to explicitly open and close, you can use ZC to close, ZO to open. I simply use ZA to toggle opening and closing. Vim also allows us to create marks, which are basically bookmarks within the code. So sometimes when you are navigating through very large chunks of code, you might want to be able to bookmark certain sections of your code and jump to that section very quickly. So let's assume line number 7 is my very important piece of code. So let me actually distinguish it by this line is important. Now, since I am specifically showing you this example on line 7, remembering line 7 might be very easy, but in practice you cannot remember line numbers. What you can do, however, is use named bookmarks. Vim allows you to name a bookmark with a single character. So let me call this line number 7 as A. So in order to call a bookmark A, I simply say MA, which means mark with the name A. And now let me move my cursor to line number 22. To jump to line number 7, which is basically my bookmark A, I press backtick A. Backtick is the symbol below the tilde symbol. The button is available on the left of 1. So backtick A jumps to line number 7. So I'll create a second bookmark on line number 14, okay, and I'll call it as MB. So M to create a new bookmark, B is the name of my bookmark. So now I have two marks, one at line number 7, one at line number 14. So to jump to line number 7, which is my bookmark A, I press backtick A and backtick B. So backtick A to jump to line number 7, backtick B to jump to line number 14. Pressing : marks shows me all the bookmarks that I've created, and you can see here line number 7 is A and line number 14 is B. Vim also allows you to perform operations on multiple lines at the same time. One option, of course, is to use macros. The second option is something that I'll show you now. Another way of doing a visual change is by pressing Ctrl V. V, the visual, allowed you to select characters. Capital V was visual line that allowed you to select multiple lines. Ctrl V allows you to do multiple visual selections, but in a columnar way. So right now I have pressed Ctrl V and I have selected a few lines. Now I'll press Shift I, which is basically capital I, to enter into a special insert mode. And any change that I perform now, which initially seems to apply only on one line, when I press Escape, get applied on all of the lines that I selected. This allows you to make changes on multiple lines at the same time. To know more about this and how we can make Vim really cool, for example, voila! Transforming your Vim into a really cool looking editor with different themes, creating sidebars like this, which allows you to quickly open files and just open it in the main editor, or you can even search for files using shortcuts like this. As you can see, I can start typing the name of the file like periodic table and then press Ctrl T to open it in a new tab. You can do a lot of really cool things with Vim. To learn more about this, you can download my book or purchase it with the links given below. Thanks a lot. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Let me know your thoughts and comments and opinions in the comments below.